In T-minus 3, 2, 1, we begin the fun. Touring our way through the NBA from that big apple to the place by the bay. Is your mind buckled in? Because it's time to begin. Sekou and his friends are doing it again. The Hang Time Podcast is the spot, so sit back, relax, because the show's about to drop.
Welcome into another edition of the Hang Time Podcast. I'm your host, Sekou Smith, here in Atlanta, dealing with the global pandemic like everyone else, but certainly not letting it keep us from engaging the basketball community in conversation. We came to you early this week with Cheryl Swoops, a Hall of Famer. And now we got another one of, the great generational players, a guy who I think is vastly underrated, if you ask me, Caron Butler of UConn and NBA fame. Tough Juice, as people know him, an all-star twice during his playing career, a champion with the Dallas Mavericks, and a guy who post-playing career has turned into one of the true, underrated veterans of the game, a guy who young players and current players go to for advice, wisdom, and all the things he provides. He's sheltered in place with his family in L.A., like you are wherever you might be, hopefully with safe and sound with your family. But he gave us some time and talked about what's going on now, some of his playing career, his relationship with Kobe Bryant, which was one of the remarkable ones that maybe hasn't been talked about. And you get a chance to get a good vibe from one of the true vets out there doing great things in Caron Butler. So check him out here on the Hang Time Podcast. Diving in on the Hang Time Podcast this week, one of my favorite cats, my vet, my OG, Caron Butler. And I know you got your own podcast. You got all this other business you got going on, man. So I appreciate you, first and foremost, taking a little time. I know everybody is quarantined right now, but time is precious, man.
Yeah, man, it's a pleasure and honor to be on with you, man. And, look, they said Sekou wanted to interview you. I said, done deal, man. That's my brother.
That's right. That's what's going on, man. Look, I've been locked in since the season stopped, like just catching up, taking a fresh look at this season, past seasons. And I started thinking about what a stoppage in play means for players. And I know you were playing in the league when there were some work stoppages. And I'm wondering, how did y'all handle the time when you basically cannot do anything with your teams, when you're locked away from the game? How do players manage this time?
Man, I think a few ways. It's somewhat therapeutic for a lot of guys where you can get away from the game. I've always been one of those guys that said, when this shit over, I ain't doing nothing else. I'm just going to relax and I put my feet up and I'm not doing this, not doing that. However, when the reality hits you, it bites like 1,000 mutts, man. It really does. And like guys want to do other things. They're interested in other things. And then you get restless because after about, let's face it, 2 weeks go by. Now you want to get back to what you're accustomed to being accustomed to. And, I think that a lot of guys want to play. They got that itch. That's why you hear on, numerous media outlets that, hey, man, we're just trying to play. We're trying to stay in shape. Can't wait to get back, because when it does happen, and I think it's going to happen relatively fast when you talk about, getting back to the game, it's going to be a quick turnaround. And guys have to be, ready for that quick turnaround. For us, we got the announcement somewhere in December, first week of December. I mean, shit, we was playing, I think, right around Christmas or something, and that happened relatively fast for us. So we had to stay in shape and be prepared for so many unknowns.
Right. What's the biggest challenge you think for these guys now in terms of, you hear a lot of them talking about coming up with alternative ways to stay in shape, but there's no way to stay in NBA game shape without being able to get on the court and run and play with other guys that are on that level. How in the world do they stay in the kind of shape they need to when they can't congregate together and play pickup games together?
You know what? It's crazy different now because when you think about, you know, whether if this would have happened in the 70s, the 80s, or the 90s, would have been totally different with the exception of probably 2 or 3 players. You had, you know, Michael Jordan that was making the astronomical figures off the court and doing what he's supposed to do, getting his value. So he had access to a gym inside his house and things like that. Mm-hmm. But now, I mean, guys are, you know, they're getting paid handsomely. So I think that a lot of people have access to all these type of equipments, whether it's a Peloton, whether it's, you know, a treadmill, basketball court, half court, something on the compound of their, you know, estates, and they're able to, you know, still have, you know, that access to exercise equipment and stay in optimum shape. But however, you know, you're still not able to, you know, compete, you know, so your rhythm and your timing and all those things are going to be off, you know, somewhat. But at the same time, because of the social distancing and all that, but you know, they will be in shape. And my big thing, Sekou, is like the injuries, you know, coming out of this, because, you know, when you're rested up and you sit still and things like that, and then all of a sudden you ramp that body up, it's like an old school, man. You know, you gotta run that thing. So it's going to be interesting to see how people, you know, respond to that impact immediately.
Yeah. Listen, and you're a director with the NBRPA. That's the National Basketball Retired Players Association. So I know you're in touch with former players, but I also know how tuned in and locked in you are with current players in the league. They come to you for wisdom and you know, all sorts of things, man. What's the conversations you're having with players right now about how they're mentally and emotionally handling not just the season being suspended, but this global pandemic and all the drama? This is unprecedented stuff for everybody. How are they feeling about what's going on in the world right now?
Yeah, well, you know, yesterday was, you know, World Health Day, and a lot of people just trying to figure out and find ways to be impactful in their communities and, you know, be an asset to the world as a whole. You know, sat down with Stephon Marbury, and he had dropped his documentary, A Kid from Coney Island, yesterday on all platforms, major platforms. And he was talking about, you know, giving the masks out, over 10 million masks, you know, to the United States, and specifically region that he targeted was New York. And then other players are just, they're not really talking about basketball. You know, they're just talking about, you know, people on the front line and how they can give back, you know, whether it's meals for a day, you know, to, you know, the medical workers that's on the front line and things like that. But, you know, prior to this, you know, pandemic happening, you know, I always talk to guys about this, putting themselves in position while they're in position, you know, and for that, they'll never be out of position, marrying them to, you know, certain, you know, legends in the game that, you know, had some hardships, and they talk to them about their, you know, financial exposure and what they did and how they can, you know, learn from their lessons. Because one thing that we all have in common is that we're all going to be legends one day. We're all going to be retired NBA players if you're part of this small fraternity. So I just try to, you know, marry some of those personalities with guys of the past, and it's been a good thing.
Yeah, this thing is also, I know, impacted folks like us who are in the media. You know, I'm sure you used to going back and forth cross country week after week. That abrupt slowdown and that abrupt halt to all that, man, that must have impacted you in terms of the rhythm you were in by early March as a broadcaster. Was it a situation where you kind of low key enjoyed the break, or did it really interrupt the flow you were in, just in terms of broadcasting games, analyzing, sitting on the desk, and the stuff you do?
Yeah, you know what? It did. You know, I think it, you know, threw a wrench in everybody's, you know, consistent, you know, way of they flowing. You know, I think about, you know, once a week I'm flying to Atlanta for, you know, NBA television, and you know, for last couple of years I've been doing that, and then all of a sudden to pivot and not be able to do that, I've become accustomed to doing that. You know, I've been part of a huge financial pool of raising capital for the graduate hotels, and we had hotels that was opening up on UConn campus and, close to the University of Wisconsin as well, that, all those things been sent on pretty much a financial furlough where, a lot of workers and a lot of people in the hospitality business, are out of work because of that, so it's just, it's a sad moment right now, but, I know that this will pass, and I know that a lot of people are looking forward to, the bright future. And I'm seeing that, from the death standpoint, watching CNN and all the major news outlets, that this thing is flattening. So hopefully, we're headed towards, a positive result.
Yeah. You mentioned the different communities. You're a guy who's, stretched in different directions, obviously being from Wisconsin and growing up there, then playing ball at UConn and, now living on the West Coast, man, you got a lot of exposure in different areas. How different is the impact that you can gauge from where you live to where you went to school to back home in Wisconsin and like how it's affecting people? I was watching the footage of the people having to stand in line to vote in Wisconsin yesterday. That was just mind-boggling that would be going on.
Yeah, man, it's crazy because this thing's it really hit me in waves, right? So my sister works at Yale Hospital, respiratory nurse. So like she calls us one night and they had over 139 fatalities from the COVID situation, and I'm like, whoa, like, and she's never been in that that just emotional space. So we're talking to her and we're trying to get her through. Fast forward to the next day where you have, business at hand. I'm conducting interviews and things like that on my podcast, talking to Steph, doing stuff like that. And then all of a sudden you get hit with a wave of information from Wisconsin. I actually talked to, Tony Evers, the governor, and he said that they had put in a motion so that this wouldn't happen. But the GOP decided that it was, paramount that, the vote and the election still go through. So they overridden them. And you had people that was out there standing in line in Wisconsin that still was at the polls that had to vote. So that was a situation. And then, you fast forward to, being here in California, we have our own, social distancing orders and stay at home things intact. So it's just like you're getting hit with waves and waves of just things and situations. And, it's been nothing usual. I could say that. And we're just trying to respond and, move accordingly.
Yeah, no doubt. It's funny you meant, when you put all that together, man, I started thinking about careers. And we talk about this when we work at NBA TV, just the scope of a career, man. This is off the subject of the pandemic, but from the time you say 14, 15 to now, could you have imagined doing all the stuff you're doing, talking to the governor of the state of Wisconsin? That's gotta be nutty to think about, man.
Bro, it's crazy. It's like your life, like when a lot of stuff happened to me, at a young age, and I went through that adversity, my life was flipped upside down. And then, I'll never forget my grandmother just saying, like, you covered from generation of prayer, baby. Like, she's from the South, Columbus, Mississippi. She said, everything gonna be everything. It's already written. And she's a strong believer. And she made me believe. And now just fast forward to, current state and seeing, the resources that I have at my disposal and able to, empower and assist, communities that's been affected and communities like the ones that I grew up in. And it's just amazing, man. And I never thought, man. I'm still like blown away sometimes. But I tell you, my big aha moment was, earlier this year. It was in December, right before Christmas, where we brought the entire Bucks basketball team with the governor to a Racine Correctional Facility that I once was incarcerated at. And Giannis made his way out there, and everybody came, and it was just to give them some hope and inspire them to, continue to move forward. Don't go there and repeat, but, try to find, and tap into the better version of you and come out being a better version of yourself. Yeah. And that was major for me. And I never in a million years thought something like to that magnitude could possibly happen. Like the entire Bucks organization at a correctional facility and the reigning MVP in there too, and that's my rook. Like, that was just crazy.
That's deep. That's deep. Man, I think about your career, and I think you are like a lot of guys of your generation who were excellent players, all-stars. You know, I mean, you're two-time all-star. You won a championship. And to me, y'all are kind of like this forgotten generation in between the Jordan era and his highlight, the zenith of his era, and then the post-Jordan era when Kobe and then LeBron and these guys became kind of the marquee face of the league. But there are a lot of really good NBA players who were showing out in the 2000s and in the 2000 teens that get kind of overlooked, not forgotten, but just kind of overlooked. We kind of flip pages from one era to another without really stopping and focusing. Speak to just the level of competition you remember in the peak of your career, man, where there were so many good players that we don't talk about now.
Man, it's so crazy. When I first came into the league, and I always tell people this, and they be like, "Oh, damn, I forgot about him," and I forgot about him. Like, so it's crazy you just said that, because you talk about, guys like Bonzi Wells and Mashburn, and you talking about the Smitties and Glenn Rice, and it was a whole bunch of guys that was just exceptional players. But like you said, you had the Jordans, and clearly you had the Kobes, and you had guys that was just mega stars that dominated the headlines and everything. But when you look at some of the guys that created the fabric of these organizations and these teams, it was some headhunters out there. I mean, every night at my position, I had Paul Pierce, I had Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady. The list goes on. You had a stint where Gerald Wallace was an all-star, and he was playing his ass off in Charlotte, and Steven Jackson, he was balling. Like, it was just so many guys, and they just, they don't get mentioned as much, but true basketball heads know. Like, when you start naming those names, like, oh shit, he was nice, like, he was cold, like. But those conversations don't happen unless you're at a round table with basketball minds.
Right. I always ask guys, and I'm curious when I talk to guys who played, man, and they get asked about other players. I'm trying to think. You famously were in a high school class with Tony Romo. I love the picture of y'all, like the all-area basketball team, and you standing over, like towering over Romo and three other dudes, who may or may not be remembered by a lot of people. But how much fun was the getting to the league part, like coming up, cutting your teeth, trying to reach the league, compared to once you get in the league and establish yourself and play as long as you did? Like, what's the emotional difference between chasing it and then getting there and having to maintain?
You know what? I don't think it's a huge difference, because and I think Kobe had touched on this one time, and I saw something that he had said, where that's the dream, like the grind, where you're trying to develop the consistency and be a perfectionist at your craft. Like, that is the dream. And I think that during the process, you fall in love with the process of, trying to be a pro, trying to be consistent, and you put installments in your craft, and then once you get there, I mean, anybody that plays high level AAU basketball or traveling circuit basketball or at these elite camps, like, those guys are going to be the short list of individuals that's going to make up the draft of your class. And outside of some of the guys that you grew up listening to or watching, rather. Those are going to be the percentage that's going to be left over, and you're going to make up the new percentage. So you're going to be playing amongst your peers for the most part, and that's what I saw. When I made it, the only difference was it was a lot of guys that was already there. When I talk about that short percentage, the T-Max and guys like that, the wave that came before us, but most of the other guys, the Drew Goodens, the Tayshaun Prince, the Carlos Boozers, the Jason Williams, those guys, Like those guys, Dwayne Wade, all like that was guys that you've seen upon the circuit that made up the rest of the class. So it was just like, how do you sustain now at this point? Like, and those who get content, you know, fall by the wayside. But those who, you know, continue to, you know, try to be consistent, try to be a better version of them, love and fell in love with competition. Those are the guys that remain and don't fall by the wayside and have, you know, some longevity in that space.
You mentioned Kobe, and I'm gonna get back to him momentarily because I know you guys were close. I don't know if people understand the kind of relationship y'all had, but you told me a funny story one time, and I'm trying to make sure I remember it, when Shaq got traded to the Heat, I think it was, and
yeah,
and like it was weird. You said I'm trying to make sure you tell it right because when you found out about it, you was geeked, right? Like you thought, oh, we getting Shaq. Like it's on.
Yeah. I was coming back from Antigua, and I was doing a basketball camp for the Miami Heat, and I'm in the airport. I'm walking through, and they like, oh shit, you know, Shaq to the Heat, and I'm like, oh snap! Like I'm excited. Like this is right after the airport. Like when I'm with the Heat now, mind you, like everybody, you know. Some of the people that I went with from the organization, they, you know, they go about their respective ways rather quickly too. And I'm like, shit, what the hell? So I'm walking, and then all of a sudden I read like the underlying part of it, like who he got traded for, because I'm like, damn, Shaq coming, we about to win a chip, you know, me, D Wade, all Lamar Odom,
right? And
they're like, oh yeah. You part of the trade, and my mouth just dropped. You know what I'm saying? And I was just like, oh snap! And you know, I was starting to get the phone call, you know, from D Wade. He chirping me. You know, Pat Riley called, and you know, shit. Myself and Lamar Odom was headed to Los Angeles, and that was just my first introduction to, you know, the business of basketball, because shit, I thought I would be a Miami Heat for the rest of my life, like, because you just don't know anything about trades and stuff like that, and they wasn't happening, you know, so quickly, you know, back then. Those days, you know, you go somewhere, you're there. You know, look at guys like Reggie Miller and guys like that. They, you know, that's the guys you grew up watching. They were organizations forever. They create the fabric and they're the face of it. So fast forward, I go to the press conference. And the first thing happened, I never seen a contract so big, Kobe contract over $130 million right in front of us. He signs the deal at our press conference. And then all of a sudden he said, hey, you ready to black out? And I'm like, what the hell is a blackout? Like, what is that all about? He was like, yo, be here tomorrow at 6:30. We're about to start training. And that was my introduction, you know, to Kobe Bryant in his blackout session.
Wow. Man, and I know that, you know, it's been a wild 2020. And I know what kind of emotional blow it was to lose Kobe and his daughter, you know, 7 other folks who died in that helicopter crash, man. But I don't know if people appreciate at this stage of life the transformation Kobe went through. And you probably can speak to it better than anybody, having competed against and alongside him during his playing career, and then knowing him post-playing career and just how different he was since those playing days, man. I took so much joy in watching Kobe mature the way he did. And I'm wondering if y'all have the same feeling, being his friends and being closer to him than most people, just how different a man he became from the young, competitive lion that he was, you know, during his early days.
Man, he was the ultimate competitor. And I think that you really touched on something that a lot of people don't talk about enough, is that, you know, we sat down one time in Sacramento and we was at a dinner, and, you know, a lot of people are, you know, sitting around, standing around. And mind you, you know, whenever me and Kobe used to go out, Rob or one of the security guys will always, like, you know, put us off in a little setting where, you know, we was out the way of the public eye and we can just kind of chill and enjoy each other and just have that conversation. But in this instance, in this time, in this moment, you know, I had already set it up. I beat him to it. So when he came in the building, I already told him, I said, yo, I'm in the side, go to the right. I'm over here. We chilling. A couple people saw him walk in. and Kobe had said, hey, let's go out there. Let's go sit in the middle in the table. I was like, huh? And he was like, let's go sit out, so the people could see us. So, we're here in Sacramento. Everybody's watching. Now, this is my last year with the Kings, and this is his last season. And he was just like, I was like, bro, what's up, man? He was just like, this the beginning of our second act, and he was like, the first act was, to be these warriors and these competitors, but now we say goodbye to that. So this our salute, this our toast and our farewell. And now we're going to be stars in our second act. But in this act, people are going to see us more. We're going to be more visual, and we're going to inspire even more, and people are going to see a different version of both of us. And that just let me know, like, right there where his mind was at, because mind you, and you can ask anyone, Kobe was always, just embodied or just occupied by basketball to the fullest, where, he thought, he slept, he like everything was just basketball. And he had layers and layers of information that he needed to know and be informed about in this game. But when that was over, he was totally invested into being the best husband, the best father, and, clearly the best confidant, as, being an asset to the people that he loved dearly in his circle of lives. And that's what he was doing.
Yeah. I read an unbelievable story about Kobe's working out at UC Irvine, and kind of that was his place to go and get his work in, away from the cameras, away from the spotlight, away from the practice facility. You live in Southern California. I always try and explain to people, and I got relatives who live all over LA, down to San Diego, up to Bakersfield, even in Northern California. When I was 12, it's 1984, and I'm out in LA visiting family. Then I go back as a young adult covering the league, and I'm around my relatives. And I didn't understand the love they had for Kobe Bryant, until I went and thought about my 12-year-old self and Magic Johnson being in the heyday of his career as a Laker, and how much LA loved Magic. And then as a young man in my 20s, seeing how my cousins talked about Kobe, it was like, I don't know if you can put it in perspective for people who haven't seen what he meant. I know he's got a global presence, obviously, but to LA specifically, to people in LA, they could not agree on a lot of things. I never felt like they disagreed on Kobe. He was universally loved in every corner that you touched in Southern California. Yeah. And I'm sure you lived it.
I think that what he tapped into and what he stood for is being more publicized and like recognized now that he's gone. Mm-hmm. And that's sad, but we always knew, people close to him in the circle, always knew, what he represented. Like, you have to think about it, and you put it in perspective, greatly when you was asking the question. Was you think of the 20 years, and you think of the guys that actually had the luxury of staying in one location for 20 years, mm-hmm. and then being successful. Like, this is like the having the most success in one location for that tenure and for that period of time. Kobe Bryant, 20 years, 5 championships, multiple MVPs, All-Star MVPs, you name it, he done it, and he did it gracefully. And he always taught me about, being, the best form of giving is anonymous, and some of the stuff that he was doing, which is talked about now when we talk about the African American Civil Rights Museum, mm-hmm. donating to that cause through their foundation, the homeless epidemic that, we go through here in the state of California, specifically in Los Angeles, how he was giving back and contributing to that, and just being, the ultimate big brother, to so many in different walks of life, and then how he was a huge advocate for, women's basketball. I mean, all those things have been highlighted and, talked about even more now that he's no longer here, and it's just amazing his impact of just so many things is extremely special.
Yeah, it's strange too because people think we know the guys that we see playing and on TV, and people get such an intimate mindset about being connected to players because of all the different ways we have now to see, social media. And everybody's got a camera crew following them around. Everybody is talking and communicating in ways that maybe they didn't prior to social media, before we had all of these outlets. I hope, that we don't take for granted players who are special people as well, and in their time. Like I love that. And you mentioned talking to Steph. Like I love that we've gotten to know Steph in ways that we might not have been able to get to know an MVP and a great, all-time great player like that in different eras. I feel like we missed on some guys in terms of getting to know their personalities off the court, knowing what they do away from the game. I went last year, I was in Wilmington, and we went to do something about Jordan, Michael Jordan for All-Star when it was in Charlotte. And it was so strange going to his hometown, speaking to people who had known him since he was a little kid and hearing the way they spoke about him. It was completely irrelevant to the Michael Jordan we knew as a player. They knew him when he was a teenager or knew him when the cameras weren't around. And I hope that it's all being highlighted in the right ways now. I don't know what you think about that, but do you think we're capturing guys in this moment now, maybe in ways that we didn't previously because of all these different media outlets we have?
Yeah, I think it's beautiful because one of the things that really kind of triggered it, I mean, a lot of guys is doing it already anyway, but one of the things that really set it off and triggered it was I remember Anchor, and I'm not going to give her the, no spotlight or anything, but just saying that, shut up and dribble and, things like that. And when you think about some of the most, successful, athletes in the world, they come from, oppressed environments and things like that. So, seeing those brothers, Chris Paul, D Wade, LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony on that SB stage that time, and, talking about real social issues and things like that, and how guys maximize their platforms where, they're not just athletes. In fact, that's the third or fourth thing you think about when you think about some of these brothers. And I think that they moved the needle and set the stage for, the next wave and the next wave and next wave after that, where, athletes aren't known for just their talents. They're known for that one specific talent. They're known for other talents, and they're creators, they're authors, they're writers, you know what I'm saying? They're activists in the communities, they're needle movers and so many other aspects and dimensions of the game of life. So it's just like, I think that really like sparks something when you talk about Kobe, Dear Basketball, winning the Oscar, and LeBron doing so many projects, through the Spring Hill Entertainment and those things. So it's amazing to see those things, and I think that has sparked the next wave to be the best version of them in those spaces.
Yeah, and I appreciate it, what all of y'all are doing. Like seeing you and all the other guys that come through NBA TV, man, it's interesting. Brendan Haywood and a bunch of other guys who to me are just much more well-rounded people than I think folks understand because they don't get a chance to interact with y'all. It's fun seeing everybody grown up, and everybody, your playing career is one thing, that's on wax. Nobody can take that away. It's already laid down. But what you do, like you mentioned with Kobe, what you do in that next phase, to me, is what's really going to define guys. It's going to define where you, a guy who passed through and played and then vanished, from the spotlight, or were you somebody who came through and then used that to impact people's lives. And I know you're doing it all over the place. So shouts to you, man. Kudos to you for making sure that you didn't exit the stage without using it the right way. I know your family's out there. Yeah, I know your family's out there sheltered in taken care of. I know you taking care of everybody, man. And continued well wishes to everybody. I hope we get back. I'm ready to get back in the studio and get back to these games and get back to chopping it up like we always do in person. So I'm hopeful. My fingers are crossed we see a resumption to this season, man. What do you think in terms of just how you do it? Like I know it's going to be unprecedented, but do you feel hopeful that we get back to this thing and put some kind of conclusion to this 2019-2020 NBA season?
I do. I'm feeling hopeful because, to all your points where guys want to play, and then you start seeing the void of, financial disbursements. And I think that when those things happen, it always triggers the urgency from the union, the players. That right there always moves the needle quickly, when money isn't being, paid out. And then you also look at, the flattening of the curve. You look at, it was, over 1,000 deaths a day. If that start, flattening and looking more, favorable for us, when you start having more informed, educated opinions from the scientists saying that these are all the facts of the virus and how it can be spreaded. There's not a lot of unknowns that we're like kind of blindly revisiting if you do resume the play. And then, the essentials part of it, I don't think that, it could possibly be fans in the crowd. I don't think it will be. And then all of a sudden, thinking about the location and, you don't want as much travel. So, the Vegas idea and that concept and other things, it seems reasonable, and I think that it will happen. I think that the season will resume at some point. And look, we got quite some time, because you think about entertainment as a whole, like all live entertainment been hit. So everything's being restructured. So we was the first one. We was the first one to, to say, what, we not playing, and we pivoted away and everybody else followed our lead. So I think that we probably would be the first one to say this is what we're doing going forward. And I think everybody else will follow the line and follow our lead as well. So Adam Silver did a remarkable job at setting that precedent and that stage for that.
No question. The leadership, to me, that the commissioner has shown has been exemplary. And you're right. When you're the first to make that change, I think a lot of people are looking for you to be the first to figure out what comes next. So it'll be interesting to see how we proceed, man. Look, it's just an uncertain time for everybody. But we'll have to sit here and ride this thing out, man. Make sure y'all stay safe out there. The whole fam. I know you doing your thing, man, and stay engaged. I see you on social media, so you know how I do it. I move in the darkness a little bit on Twitter. I'm not an Instagram guy, but I'm learning. This little break is giving me a chance to figure this stuff out.
Hey, well, when I get back that way, man, I'm going to teach you all the ins and outs of this IG thing, man. Get you going.
No question, man. I appreciate you, CB.
All right, love you, bro.
Thanks, man. Love it. Appreciate you. As always, love my brother Caron Butler. Words of wisdom for everybody out there. You listen to what he's got to say and his perspective, man. It's educational, enlightening. You're talking about a guy who went from the depths, as a young person to, first name basis with the governor of his home state in Wisconsin. How you like that? So you can learn some lessons from him, listening, watching the way he moves. Hopefully young players are emulating some of the things he's doing and has done in his career in life. As I mentioned earlier this week, we're going to keep coming to you as often as we can with compelling people in the basketball world. Shout out to Caron Butler for joining us, for my producer, Anthony Bonaparte. We will definitely see you here next time on the Hang Time Podcast.
This one is done, but in case you want another one, here's the links to all the fun from Sekou Smith's Hang Time run. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, NBA.com/hangtime, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, Hoops fans. you.